And what's up, Disrupt Nation? Thank you so much for joining me again here on the Super Creators Podcast. I am your host, Super Manny, and today I have a special guest coming on board that I'm really excited for you guys to meet. As you know, usually on the podcast, we have more of the creatives in the photography or videography space, but today we're reaching out a little bit more. So I want to introduce to you today Kyle Vine. He's an entrepreneur and poet that likes to experiment with new ways of communicating. With Poetry Ghost, he offers businesses writing, helps other entrepreneurs find their voice, and shapes unique business ideas. He highlights local talent on a weekly radio show called Safe Space, and a passion for music and supporting community fills the rest of his time. So Kyle, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm excited. I'm really excited to see where the conversation goes, because it's rare that you get to have a creative to creative kind of talk, I find, in podcasts.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why I'm happy to have this space to be able to connect. So first of all, I wanted to ask, where are you actually calling in from?
Yes, I'm actually from Northern Ontario in Canada.
Okay, awesome. I was going to say you had a slight accent, but I didn't know from where it was. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's more prominent than I realize, I think.
Yeah.
But so it's about four hours north of Toronto that I'm in currently.
Okay. Yeah, I visited Montreal, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago for New Year's, the weekend. And I loved it. It was great, but I didn't get to visit the rest of, Ontario or Toronto and things like that.
They're big cities, though. Like Montreal is one of those places I can spend 6 months there and still have more stuff to see.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things I loved the most was, well, first of all, I met, I think, people from at least 15 different nationalities, all the way from, Egyptian, Syrians, people from, England. Like it was crazy. And the subway system over there, I loved it. Every subway has like a different look and vibe. It was very, very artsy.
And it works so well too.
Yeah.
I was there for a business trip, I guess in November, and it's impressive how fluid their subway system is.
It is. It was. That's pretty much how I traveled the whole time I was there, and I had no problem. I felt like, yeah, I had no problem really getting around and seeing everything. So it was pretty good.
It's cost effective too, because I find that, like in Toronto, for example, that's where I spend a bit of time, just because the startup world in Toronto is massive at this point, especially in tech and people trying to disrupt and kind of break things.
Yeah.
But yeah, but compared to Toronto, where walking around is probably not your best option and the subway is kind of awkward, they kill it with that. It's pretty dope that way.
Do they? Nice. Yeah. I know a few of the noted photographers that I follow and I like are actually from the Toronto area. One guy, Alan Palander, he's like, I don't know if you heard of him, but he's like official when it comes to his work. It's so polished. It's like amazing.
That's crazy. It makes sense though. That city, there's so much creativity there, and there's even the amount of public art is something that it's hard not to get it's not hard not to get inspired, I find.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's like a New York with like with a more homey vibe, I guess, right?
Oh, 100%. Because there's a lot of mainstream tech, and there's a business government atmosphere, but then there's other parts of the city where it's just pure art and music and photography, and there's just murals, and it's kind of one of those things that I want to go there at one point and just do a bunch of poetry and sort of get inspired by the city, because I've always been there for business trips.
Mm-hmm.
And so unless you're going to a concert and then you see all the art as you walk to it. There isn't really, you don't get a chance to actually enjoy the creative vibe
Got it.
and just let yourself go. But I guess in your case, like as a photographer, it's natural because you just walk around with your camera and you catch everything.
Yeah. It's kind of how it goes down. That's good. So then, so just real quick, so we were able to connect because you mentioned that you work with poetry. So I wanted to get into that, like how, tell us a little bit about Poetry Ghost, about what you're working on, and
Yeah. Poetry Ghost is a marketing company that I started that uses the main elements of poetry to really change how we do copywriting. Because I find that from that approach, and when you make it a system, you're able to highlight personality and brand voice, but also get a lot of customer engagement out of it. Because a lot of startups, they tend to go through the problem of doing their own writing or having a team of 5 and everyone just takes turns posting on Facebook,
mm-hmm.
like, because that's all you need when you're growing and building a product. It's not a big deal. But I started to notice that branding was the biggest problem, and the easiest way to approach it, or well, a quick fix is copywriting and the positioning of poetry as the avenue is based around getting exposure to the arts, because a lot of copywriters write poetry or fiction in their free time, but it's not really talked about. And if you look on LinkedIn, you won't find it anywhere.
That's very
It's
true.
it's kind of like a hidden talent, right? Where the business world doesn't really care about it, or it's assumed that people in business that are hiring them aren't going to really need to know that they've written 2 poetry collections.
Got it. Well, yeah, I mean, well, can you go a little bit into that? Because I know, I mean, I'm trying to be more broad-minded about it, but I think when people hear poetry, um, it, I guess they feel it in them like the most minor sense of the word. So can you like go more in depth in what you mean as poetry and how it actually like works?
Yeah. So when it comes to poetry, there's 4 things that are in every piece of it. Essentially, there
Mm-hmm.
is careful word choice, the the overall structure of the writing, the sentence length, and the fact that the message is kind of hidden, so it's not a blatant, clear, oh, I know what you were talking about immediately kind of message. And every poem has that, and it's a matter of how the writer changes it up to their own benefit. So if they use more long drawn out sentences, or if they make a line that's only 3 words, and so I've tried to channel that and put it into a box almost, so that I'm able to show business owners how it's possible to integrate poetry into their business culture as well.
Got
So
it.
it's not new, because a lot of copywriters are inspired by that, but it's the framing and it's the way that uh, clients can go through the process of me writing something for them and start to see that creativity and the way that you play with words is completely up to you. And it's
Mm,
a matter of, and especially, and it makes poetry accessible because they're able to look at it, see the final product, and see, oh, okay, so this is similar to what I've seen in a poetry book, or this is, now I get how poetry is so open and undefined.
yeah. Okay. I can see that now. And that's good that you were able to explain that because like I mentioned, most people probably think of poetry in a very like basic way, but I think it's more deeper than that because it's the way of, like you said, finding new ways to communicate. You know,
Oh,
it's a
100%.
it's a way of branding.
I think that's honestly the biggest uh, approach that I took to it, and that's the biggest vision I have, is that I want to start in changing the way we communicate. So really getting people to think about their word choice, so the message, or making it easier for others to communicate without having to go through a lot of courses or just go through the process that we would have to go through, right? Like as a videographer, you have to have 10,000 hours to become an expert, right? And
Hmm.
same thing with writing and any sort of profession. But but I feel like you could learn copywriting and learn marketing and how to brand yourself without those 10,000 hours if you have the right base and the right help, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, basically, I mean, you go from, I mean, you learn from the masters. Basically, you learn
Yeah.
the main points, and then just implement those key strategies. So you mentioned about copyright, and I know that copywriting is super important in everything that is marketing. But I feel like in this digital age, a lot of people miss out on it, on the copywriting aspect, just because a lot of things are more visual.
Oh, 100%.
But I think also nowadays it's kind of doing like the loop back, because we're so attacked visually that people are actually like not looking at what's being posted, and they're reading about it. So, okay, can you go into a little bit about like the importance of copyright, like how it can affect having the same, let's say, image or product with good copywriting and one without it?
Yeah. It's, I don't know, man. It's such a hard balance because it depends on the product, I think, too. You know, like I've worked with people where they they need the copywriting to really explain the product benefits because good copywriting can really show off the things that visuals can't.
Hmm.
So a lot of the emotion behind a product, or rather the emotional appeal you want to give off, or copywriting can highlight the features and the end result. So even though the visual can show off the colors and design and look and how to use something, there's still an element of writing that comes in that can showcase why this is all good, or what the strength of this product is, or how it compares. But I think too, it's honestly, copywriting is a way to just build off the visual. Like
Yeah.
it's equal, it's half and half. And you can have good copywriting, but if you don't have a photo, then it can also be really difficult unless you are a brilliant copywriter.
Yeah. No, no, and I get that, because even a lot of times, like recently with a lot of the like the photo or video projects that I'll be working on, the last thing that I would look into is where can I add text? You know, where can I add some copyright? Where can I really like bring the brand message together? And sometimes there'll be a scene where it'll look very like it's possible you can enjoy it, but it's still kind of like long drawn in a
Yeah.
sense. But once there's that part of text, you completely change the dynamic of it. And it's, and then it's usable and it works. So I've seen, that's one thing that I really want to learn, actually, copywriting and getting good with like text to explain like the visual with the message. I think it's super powerful. It's
Yeah, and
really,
it should complement the visual, the right, or the visual element, because it's the same thing with video. There's some videos I've seen, like when you look at Casey Neistat videos, or uh, Gary Vee sometimes does it really well, where the transitional text between scenes, or or when they put what they're saying in text so people can read it, but it's only one sentence and the rest of the conversation is not done like that. It's kind of, there's these small things that are brilliant, and I tend to play with it too. I mean, like when it comes to SEO for videos, you can make really good text and
mm,
captions for social media. But at the same time, I think that the other element of copywriting that people tend to get stuck in is that they assume it's only when you're trying to do a sales post, or when you're trying to do a blog article, like something that's a blatant sales thing. Like, I don't know whether you've noticed that just from the photography view, but I've noticed that it's a thing where I'll be in a room and someone hears what I do and they're like, oh, well, when we need to do a summer
mhm.
discount summer sale, I'll call you.
Yeah, but it has no. I mean, well, the main thing that you mentioned was that this ties in with branding, and branding is literally what message the company represents at all times. So whether it's a direct sales pitch or whether it's just a new product release or an ad or whatever it is, that same branding has to be seen throughout the whole thing. It's like, but the ultimate example is just like Nike's Just Do It.
Yeah.
It's even though it's very short, but that message is seen through every product that they bring out, and you automatically have that story of Just Do It with whatever sneaker, whatever athlete, whatever, thing that they're promoting. So that's like, perfect branding. But it's true what you were saying. A lot of people, they'll just see it as like a for a sales pitch, but it's more than that now. It's way more than that.
Yeah, it's becoming more common because also with LinkedIn, the way that LinkedIn has become an avenue for people to brand themselves, which is more personal branding, but it's incredible how much you can. It's incredible how when you find your voice or sort of what you want to sound like, and then you find the words that do it, it works really. It's great that you can create an image that people just that they tie to your writing, so they make some sort of visual aid, and then it goes from there where you just add on to it, or if you add the occasional photo, or sometimes some of the best branding tricks are that you make basic graphics and basic photography and use your copywriting that you do through social media and use that to fill in the blanks.
Yeah. No, I've seen like recently there's been ads that I've seen that are very, I mean, simple in the sense of the visual wise, but just through the text or, through their copywriting and everything is what really like drives the message. And sometimes I'll see it and I'm just like, all right, this is a cheesy ad. And then other times I'm like, okay, this is actually interesting. I want to see what they're talking about, even though they really didn't show much. They might have just like one picture or even like a random picture, but whatever the text was, it kind of like, it spoke to whatever I was thinking at that time.
Yeah, and it definitely, I think it's the way that it plays a role with Facebook ads and Instagram ads is huge. Because I've seen a lot of Facebook ads that are just horrendous and don't catch you whatsoever. But you're right. There's some out there where you see the photo and it's meaningless. Like there's no need. It's a
Mm-hmm.
stock photo they've picked because they had to have a photo.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you read it and you're like, oh, this is insane. This isn't even my niche, but I'm down to check it out. Sure.
Yeah, and sometimes it'll be, I mean, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times I've noticed that the use of asking a question usually grabs a lot of attention. Like it'll just be like, have you had, do you have enough free time for yourself? Or how to, make more hours to do what you love. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, you all have the same hours. Like, how do I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that because, and actually I was thinking about that the other day when I was just creating content and I was going to make a post about it because it's it's a good approach, but it's one of those things too that when you apply to the sales process, it's almost assuming that you're already primed and ready for their content. It's really interesting. Like it's a sort of it's a strategy layer of copywriting, but when you look at the sales journey, and I see that a lot where people are saying, "Do you have time?" or "Do you have trouble with accounting?" or any other like very basic questions.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. It would be interesting to see their feedback and their metrics because doing that sort of it's assuming that you're already interested in their product and that you're already vaguely interested in what they're doing, and then this question can come in and just be that final thing to push the button, make you
Yeah.
click and buy their service. It's such a fascinating thing. And I mean I don't know, and I see it a lot. And I've started thinking is that about whether it works Or could you rephrase things and say, instead of saying, do you have time to do things that you enjoy? You could say, we all need time to do things we enjoy.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
really, yeah.
I was
Right?
even that caught me right there. I'm like, oh yeah, it's true. We do. We all do.
Yeah. And I don't know. There's different schools of thought. And it depends on your niche too. The question thing works if your target is very confused or distressed or anxious, where they're just looking for solutions anywhere too.
Hmm.
Or like if you're a sales coach, or if you are trying to target people who want to hit six figures, you can ask the right question, and it's a brilliant way to catch tons of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes down to humanizing brands. And I'm gonna throw that out there because recently, Carlos Gil, he just wrote his first book, and he said the end. It was, I think it's titled "The End of Social Media and Humanizing Brands," and
Yeah,
I think
somebody really.
that's
I'm kind of
yeah,
stoked to read it.
yeah. So I mean, I think that has been the kind of like the way for the last few years is people are connecting to the story and the person behind any brand. Like it could honestly, it doesn't have to be the best product. I always I'm an advocate for this because I always say, if I know you personally over anybody else, like right now, I literally don't know any other copywriters.
Yeah.
Like in general, that's what they do. But now I know you. So the first person that I'm gonna think of, the first person that I'm gonna recommend to anybody I know, I'm gonna be like, oh, you got to check this guy out. He's amazing. I've spoke with him, I've met with him, just because I know you now personally. So I know your story and what your thoughts are on, on your creativity and branding. So that's the connection. So whether you're the best or not, but you're my recommendation because we already have that human connection, so it's more than just a brand itself.
Yeah, and that's the approach I try to take with the copy, and using poetry as the way to really make that easier. Actually, I guess leveraging that is sort of, that's my way to make that a lot easier, because that's my goal, is doing that, because if you follow, so kind of if you take the approach of copywriting where you start with strategy and then you try to execute it and then you see what your results are after, then you don't really get a voice, you get more of a in the box sort of idea.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
that's something that, like we all do it, right? We all look at a marketing campaign, or when we're editing a video, we have a system. And so with Poetry Ghost, I tried to take an out of the box approach and really try to go for what is a customer response and make that the goal the whole time. So the strategy might change, but if I'm not getting engagement, or if I'm not helping a client find their brand voice or appeal to a certain audience that thinks the same way or reads the same way, it defeats the point of helping them.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree. It's something that I've always been a fan of, and it's what got me into Gary Vee when I was, I guess 3-4 years ago, because I found him like that way, where it's pretty authentic. But then there's some others who it's brilliant. Like it's powerful when you're able to communicate online, and then people see you in person and they get the same response, or they see how you are on social media and they get a taste of your personality, but it's enough that they can build connections and say, oh, I was here for this, or yeah, I've also had this problem, or I've also needed to upgrade a camera, or I've needed to sell something and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to like building a community.
Oh, 100%.
People connect with a community. So, and it goes back to fandoms, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna throw it out there. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, but I know
I
it's
have
a
other two.
it's
Okay.
all right. So, but you know, it's a thing that's out there. People like it, they enjoy it, but it's a type of like a fandom, right? And it's a community. And a lot of times I'm like, okay, why are these people like they're stressed because some season was bad or this and that? But I'm just like, the reason why they're stressed is because it's something that they connected with. You know,
Hmm.
it's something that they connected with emotionally, and they can share with other people. So it's a community. It's like right now we both didn't watch it, so we have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
But we put two fans in the room, and they will go on and on about every character, every detail, every Easter egg, and that's what makes it long lasting because it's a community that continues to focus on the people. And I think that like brands nowadays that are really excelling and doing well are the ones that are building a community. You know,
Yeah.
that it's not like, because before it was like the brand and then the people, right? Or the consumer, the client. And
Yeah.
however bigger the brand was, that's what made it that much more special. But now it's like if the brand is just as equal as the client and consumer, then that's like the brand is actually like making it happen nowadays.
And from like a branding standpoint, I think it's even more important to know what values you're giving your community,
Mm,
because you can create a community around a show or around a topic or around poetry, but I feel like it's even more important which values you're trying to give off. And it's something that I don't know. I've noticed that with some Facebook groups and some brands and some big companies, they don't really have brand values, they have brand purpose. Right?
got it.
It's that sort of timeless topic conversation of corporate entities trying to say they believe in the environment by donating $1 from every purchase to some random cause that no one really knows about.
Hmm.
And then it works, but it doesn't really reflect the values of someone like us, I feel like.
Okay.
And
So
so it's
can you expound on that a little bit? Like when you say the company, like the values that they're trying to, like what kind of value are
yeah,
you?
so they're so like I would a company value would be a sort of feeling or emotion that they're trying to get other people to feel as well. So the brand values of Netflix would be convenience. So they're trying to make it feel like their service is convenient, but they're also trying to make you feel like what you're doing is convenient for you.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so they create a community around all their people, everyone that watches them. When they go out in public, they're like, "Oh, it was convenient that new episode just started automatically." And so it's things like that where,
Mm,
and like, especially with big brands, when you're trying to build your own, I feel like that's something that I try to push, is to really get people to think of what value and what adjectives would you want people to describe you as, essentially. Because with those, then you can create a community around those adjectives and know that by highlighting Game of Thrones, you're showing that you're cultured.
mm-hmm.
Or by talking about mental health, you're showing that you value health, for example. Like it's things like that where um, a lot of brands, a lot of them nail it. I mean, there's people like Move the Dial that are killing it for that. Or when you get brands like Wendy's, they're able to show off their values of confidence and pride through their Twitter feed.
Got it.
Which, because I'm not sure if you've seen the every now and then there's the whole Wendy's versus Burger King Twitter feud comes up, and
Oh, I haven't seen that.
it is it's kind of cliche, but it's something they hired a writer to turn their Twitter feed into a very human sounding company voice, and they'll call out Burger King, or they'll retweet other franchises and say that sounds like us except we have good quality food.
God, yeah. I've seen. Okay, I have seen some of those. Yeah, they surfaced up. a few years back, and I was reading like a whole section of it, and I found it hilarious.
It's hilarious because you know it's fake, but at the same time, it's just, but it's, there's a lot of people doing it now, but it's things like that, where it's simple things, but they're able, and I guess it indirectly relates to copywriting, but at the same time, like they made their brand stand out. So now people don't think of them for food as much, but they think of them as a person who's just really confident with their product. And there's like, cool,
Mhm.
we're going to call other people out on their hamburger because we think ours is dope.
It's better, yeah. That's awesome. So then you touched up on Twitter, and that's something that I would like to talk on if you can help with that, because I know also in the whole social media jungle, there's everybody's fighting for attention and things like that. So in a sense, it seems like Twitter has been on the back end,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it's still super powerful, and it's
Oh,
still
dude.
being used by billions daily. And it's so I haven't found still like my voice, I guess you can say, or like how to brand in Twitter, but I can imagine as using copyright and poetry that Twitter's like, that's the kind of like the platform where you can excel, where text is first and the visuals are like secondary.
Mm-hmm.
um so how would you describe, like, I guess, marketing using Twitter? Like, what would be the strategy, or what is the importance of that in that case?
It would come down to knowing what you want to sound like, or rather who you want to connect with. So Twitter, and I've actually sort of found the same thing with my personal branding of trying to build something on Twitter, because there's so many different audiences, and you have to choose who you're trying to connect with and how they interact, because it's such a person to person platform.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, uh, I feel like the easiest way or the best way is just to figure out how you speak in person, and then decide whether you want to come across as someone sarcastic, or if you want to come across as someone knowledgeable, or random thoughts. Because some of the best people, the best companies on Twitter tend to copy a lot of sarcastic, very personality driven type of writing,
Mm-hmm.
which is how most of the normal users on Twitter talk. Like it's people tend to use Twitter as their avenue of saying things that you can't really say in public.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what they say. It's like 140 characters of just like mind dump, whatever you want to say, and like you need to get it off your chest. It's like, write a tweet about it.
Oh, 100%. And it's great sometimes because within like startups and investing and VC culture, it's incredible how much you can learn through Twitter, because there's a lot of design agencies and venture capitalist funds and just investors that use Twitter, and they'll post their random thoughts, and it creates a dialogue between other investors,
Mm.
or it just creates conversation that you normally wouldn't have unless you go to a conference about that topic. So it's great for that. But as a brand, which is to answer your question, I would say the easiest way is to figure out who your audience is and what they want to read. Because if you're trying to appeal to people like us who are just creatives, who are just always looking for something that inspires them, maybe give some value every now and then, but at the same time, we can get an education ourselves if we really need to, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we're on Twitter and we're reading everyone else being really personal and just giving random thoughts, companies can use Twitter to do the same thing. They can tweet out their random thoughts or like client activities, or give updates on where they're going. And they can really play with it too, I think, in the sense that there's no limitations on what you're saying. and no one's going to really criticize you for it. Like the comment section isn't really a thing on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
it's not like
it's
Facebook. Yeah.
it's basically you can reply if you have something to say about what they said, and then that's it.
Yeah.
It's
Because also too, right? And it's almost incredible how Twitter has made a platform that stops people from answering because it's on your feed. So when you reply to someone, it's on your Twitter feed, so you can't avoid it. So if you say something and
it's gonna show up.
yeah, so like if you say something, if you answer to someone and you're a complete racist, it's on your Twitter feed.
Yeah,
You
because you can.
hide
Yeah,
it.
because on other platforms you can comment, and it'll just be on that person's random page, and whoever
Yeah,
follows them will be able to see it.
yeah, it's trapped on the thing, and I've noticed that with Facebook, where you can have debates with people, and it could have 120 comments, but within a day, you'll never find it again unless you look back to your activity.
That's true.
But then with Twitter, everything you say, uh, it's visible unless you delete the tweet. And so that can kind of work in your favor because then you're able to actually test things out. Like it's interesting because I've noticed that some, with some Twitter activity that you can actually test out what works and see that, oh, well, maybe it's not worth replying here, or this tweet didn't get any feedback, but this one that rhymed or was a 2-line poem did. So that's it. And so I think it's good for brands to play with it and actually show their fun side.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so because my first, I guess, introduction with Twitter was years back when I'm talking about when BlackBerry was still a thing.
Yeah.
You know? But what I remember is at that time, so I was just like, I'm always a big fan of music. So one of the artists at the time that had just, I guess, spawned was Owl City.
Yeah.
And his music is very like happy and joyful and like upbeat and just feel good. And I remember that there was just a few of the fans on there, and they would tweet out a song lyric, and we would just take it from there, and we will finish it and keep adding and make these like huge, like, I guess, what you call them, like threads of
Yeah.
commenting on it. But it was just amazing because I would literally go on Twitter just to speak with that community, and just to share and to see what they posted and things like that. So it was really like having a conversation with friends. So
100%. I mean, I do the same thing with tech and startups. Like I've learned, I think I've met more designers, uh, entrepreneurs and investors through Twitter than I have in person.
yeah, no, it's a great. I think social media, all the platforms are amazing for connecting people in the same industry and out of it. Like,
And I guess too, something that would be important, especially for the people listening, or especially for you and just anyone. And yeah, it's that I think every platform has a purpose, and it's something that we don't hear often, or we're told to put content everywhere, make sure to spray it or be direct. But every platform has a meaning, and it's all different. So Facebook is great to connect personally, but it's also where you can do sales pitch, do sales posts and educational things and get away with it.
mm-hmm.
Then Instagram comes in and it's where it's visual heavy, and you can write a lot, but what you write generally should be very transparent or authentic or some sort of personal message, because it's either that or very minimal writing and very heavy visual. So it's more entertainment, right? And then then Twitter comes in and fills that void of where you can have fun with it and do whatever you want. And LinkedIn is obviously LinkedIn, where it's business professional, but the chances of you selling something on LinkedIn is difficult unless you have a product catered to them directly.
Mm.
And it's something that I feel like I don't see a lot of it when it comes to like the customer education side of things. And on LinkedIn, you don't see a lot of it, which is interesting because it's huge. You know, like if you think about it, and I'm sure you've had that too, where you've tried to post something on Facebook and Twitter or Facebook and Instagram at the same time, and the reaction on Facebook might be huge, but on Instagram there's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
or vice versa.
Well, yeah, it's exactly as you mentioned that every platform has its purpose. So you definitely have to put out the content. Even, and that's one of, I guess, my biggest challenges, even when it comes to social media, because I'll try to, how can I make this one piece of content, but how can I tell the whole story through all the different platforms? Sometimes I want to have, I want to talk about it, like what it is. So I might leave the link of the video and then, tweet about, more of my mindset with doing the project. Obviously Instagram is going to be heavy on the visual side. Same thing with like YouTube. But even LinkedIn, I've seen recently it's actually it's a platform now that's actually pushing heavy on video.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about it is that also whatever you like or reply on continues to show up on your feed. So one thing that I've noticed is like a lot of people you'll scroll through their activity and you'll see the same post 10 times, 12 times, 13 times. And it's because somebody else replied and he commented back, or they liked it. And, so it's if you want to get the same content seen a lot,
Oh yeah.
LinkedIn is perfect. And so I
Organic
feel
growth
like,
is huge on LinkedIn.
yeah,
It's crazy impressions you can get if you get the right influencer post or like the right influencer that you interact with. It's nuts.
yeah, it's amazing. It's still, I think it's still like the hidden gem, because I guess a lot of people haven't found their professional side yet, I guess. So, because, LinkedIn is more of like, all right, you actually have to stand for something and be something,
Yeah.
and then just be about that. You can't just be random, I
Yeah.
guess, in a
I don't
sense.
know, man. I've always had a problem with LinkedIn just because of the box you have to put yourself in to actually succeed on it. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I've noticed that when when you use LinkedIn growth strategies, or when you when you engage with others, your content can be good, but they're looking for a certain type, and
Mm,
everyone's looking for actionable value, but at the same time, they want something that's vague that they can just comment and say, "Oh, that's a fantastic idea," and then walk away.
yeah.
And
Well,
so it's go ahead.
no, I was just gonna comment that like I feel that LinkedIn is the best place to, in a sense, give insight of what you do and how it helps businesses in a way of being not salesy, but
Yeah,
letting them know how important this aspect of what you do helps, businesses. So it's more of like you don't know you need me yet, but that's why I'm talking about it.
oh no, actually, I know, I agree. Like I remember when I went 3 years ago, when I started getting into LinkedIn, and I was pretty dedicated. I went from maybe 100 connections to now 1,700 in about a year,
Nice.
and that was from engaging through comments and through connecting and through a lot of conferences and events and content. But even still, you're right. Like, it's a brilliant platform to educate people on what you do. But the minute you try to sell, it doesn't work because everyone's trying to sell.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, but it's definitely, it's the platform. I guess the next one that I'm really trying to master, and and it's amazing because even one of my recent clients that I was working with out here in the Houston area, um, was through that. It was through LinkedIn. That's like his main platform. So I was just like, all right, so this client, I was able to reach him through LinkedIn, but how many others like him are in his network or are looking, for the same type of work? So it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's so untapped.
Yeah, there's a lot of space there. I mean, even with video, if you have a visual, you can do well. Uh, Quentin Alums on LinkedIn has done brilliantly. And because of LinkedIn, that's what actually pretty much got him to the point where he could hire two videographers and create his own video advertising firm.
Nice.
But he started as a solo videographer and just started posting tons of daily vlogs, commercials on LinkedIn, and built a community after a year and a bit, year and a half or so. And yeah, like there's a lot of space, and it's kind of fun because there's also varied niches. Like in the
Mm-hmm.
poetry space, there's people who do things called poetry trains, where I'll write a poem, maybe like 12 lines long, and then I'll challenge you to write one, and then you have to challenge someone else, and it creates this thing where it's all happens in the comment section, and it
Mm-hmm.
just builds. So it starts with one poem for myself, and the comments, there's 14 other people who added of their own verse or section.
Got it.
So there's the whole like poetry niche, and then there's a sales niche, and there's all these weird random elements of it that if you find something that blends them together or tap into, yeah, it's extremely untapped.
Yeah. And it's really it's a powerful tool, and I've been keeping my eye out on it, and and I think it's good to bring it out there, because a lot of times, like, since it is very professional, I still think that a lot of people try to keep this very serious vibe, and I think it's more about um being the face of a company,
Yeah,
more or less, and just showing, like, okay, I'm the person that you're going to be dealing with, that you're going to be working with. This is what we're about. This is what we do. This is who we are. This is works that we've done, and just kind of being very, like, almost like a portfolio, but more of like a updated daily portfolio where people can keep checking, like, what you're doing and what's going on.
yeah, pretty much. And like even for companies, uh it's not really, I see a lot of companies just updating their followers. It's just it's almost like people, it's like the way that people do email newsletters.
Yeah.
It's the same approach on LinkedIn, where the company pages are basically just updating on where they are. Because I don't, it's, yeah,
I mean, which is also good, because depending on who are the ones that are following, they might want to know where you're speaking at next, if you're going to be attending a certain event,
yeah,
um, things like that, kind of like that status, social status.
yeah. So it's definitely nice. Like it's nice as professional, because then if that's a market you're heading into, or if you're trying to target the corporate, very uh, someone that works for a company that's 5 employees plus, or or corporate positions, it's great because you can actually directly target them and make your content hit where they are and find them. So it's really a nice outlet. Like I've made a lot of good connections to people that have helped out, and there's others that I have become mentors through LinkedIn, because they're all accessible. No
Yeah.
one's content is hidden, so you're able to reach out and comment on their post and give them value, or say, hey, I appreciated this, or give feedback. And then it creates that exchange back and forth that you would normally only have in person at conferences and over the phone.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely good for that. But I wanted to ask something. The name Poetry Ghost, where did you get it from? What's the story behind it?
The name of it comes from the first iteration of the company. So when I first started this, I wanted to just do personalized poetry. I thought it was a brilliant idea, and I needed an idea for a pitch contest. And I thought, hey, this is great. I can get paid to write, and I can do that by doing personalized poetry, hence the name. So it's because it was ghostwriting, but
Yeah.
for poetry. So I was just like, great, sweet. I'll just use the name Poetry Ghost. And I went through the pitch contest and it didn't work. And the name is still there 3 years later.
There you go. But yeah, because that's what I thought of. I was like, Poetry Ghost. Okay, it's just like ghostwriting, but poetry, but it
And
makes
that's
sense, and it has a nice ring.
right. And it's something that I never intended for it to really be a scalable name. It was sort of a natural pairing, that it was just the second half is basically your presentation, and the first half is what you do.
Hmm.
And then I went through the pitch contest and I noticed that the name resonated with a lot of people, and it's ambiguous, but it stands out.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so
what?
I just,
No, no, go ahead. Finish that thought. Sorry.
yeah. And so I just stuck with it. And 3 years, well, 3.5 years later, people now still remember the name from when I first pitched as a personalized poetry company.
There you go. Well, that's where I think the most, like, the best names and ideas come from are the ones that are as authentic as it can get, and just like on the whim, it's like, all right, this is what it is, and this is who I am, and I chose this because, because it's automatically, it's personalized. It came
Yeah.
from you, from the moment that, like where you were, what you were thinking of. And so a lot of times, like when we try to think out what would be the best and most like professional and appropriate name, it's like it never works. It
And
always
it's
comes
hard,
out to
man. I
this.
mean, naming things is hard, but I'm just really happy how it works because it still fits. I mean, technically, doing copywriting, you're not taking credit. Like
Because you are ghostwriting.
yeah,
Yeah.
like my goal is to give you credit for what you're doing, and I just get paid for it. I mean, that's kind of the exchange, right?
Yeah. So
It's
it's
the same
it's
thing
still.
as songwriting credits or things like that, where your intention is to help the client do better. And so if I get all the credit, what's the point? I'll
Yeah.
write for myself.
You work for yourself, exactly. But that's, yeah. But like you were mentioning, naming things is difficult unless it's like, it comes from the natural source, from like one's inside. Because even a lot of times, like I'll have projects and I might make a video, like a little short film or something, and literally the first thing that comes to mind, I just name it that.
Yeah.
And but it's usually the thing that like that resonates most with that. It's what it's about, It's like the most, like sometimes it'll be kind of like, all right, why would you name it that? But it's what it is, and it's the name that came out, and it's
I
it,
like
it
that. That's good.
works. Yeah, it ends up working, and
Yeah,
that's why
man,
I
that's
think,
clever.
yeah, a lot of times I think just as being genuine, authentic, and as like you possible, I think that's the only way to really stand out nowadays, because that's the one thing that really can't be replicated. It's
Yeah.
oneself, like your thoughts, your the way you express yourself, things that you find funny, things that you find sad, things that you find inspiring, aren't the things that other people find happy or sad or inspiring, or so it's those unique perspectives of like everything that we've like lived that makes us who we are, and that's what really like projects out of brands. So I think that's what makes it like, like really pop out and be something, even if it sounds silly at the beginning, but it being that like silly and that kind of like out there is what people connect with.
And there's something about having a name that's ambiguous, so you decide what it means almost too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a factor, but you're right though. That there's when a name is just blunt and transparent and not trying to be mischievous or trying to be really special. There's something about it that I just really like when I see companies that do the same thing. You read the name and you're like, oh, that's what you do. Cool.
Yeah.
Like there's no mystery there. So now when I tell, like, if I tell people or when I think of you and as a brand, that defines what you do. Like I play with poetry and I do the writing to give you credit. All right. That makes sense.
That's
Um,
it. Simple.
or when you
To the
get people,
point.
like, what's that?
I'm saying simple and to the point.
Exactly. Like it's because it's fun when you have a complicated name, but I don't know. There's also something fun about being direct, but also being vague because a name should grow with you. And so you want to create a name that you're able to scale, but at the same time still keep the same meaning. So yeah, there's certain companies out there that just have brilliant names and you're like, man, that looks like it took forever and they probably broke down brand values, but it's the most straightforward name you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the other companies that have like the most complicated name that they don't even know what they do anymore.
Yeah. And that's the other half of it, right? And that's because you can trap yourself into that where you make a name that's very niched, and then all of a sudden you can't grow, or you have to rebrand and change your name. And
Yeah.
which I guess I'm lucky in that sense. I can always, my name could literally represent anything that uses poetry, which
Yeah.
is nice. But yeah, no, that's a good point, because and as someone who works with startups that are always having trouble naming things, it's something I don't remind them as much of. Like, I always tell them that make a name that you can grow, and that can be ambiguous and easy to pronounce. But yeah, I don't say as often as I should that to not make a name that will trap you. So that's a
Yeah.
good point.
No, no, definitely. And even like you were mentioning, even using, like Poetry Ghost, you really can have anything out of that. It can, and even it doesn't even have to deal with poetry. It can.
Yeah.
It also can't, and it'll still work because you can. It's very loose. You can still like work with it. So it's good. You could definitely branch out, and nobody would care. They wouldn't. They wouldn't tell the
Yeah.
difference. They would still, follow it.
Yeah, it's kind of a natural branding thing. I mean, a lot of what I've done with Poetry Ghost, and now that there's a second person on board and soon to be a third to branch out into the corporate world, uh, I've the lot of the branding has just come naturally over the years of trying to, or of realizing that I start something that has a unique concept around it, and it's meant to be more than one person involved. And so it's been a process over the last 6 months to a year of creating systems and really making sure that what I'm doing can grow and can be seen by different people and able to just move. Because I didn't want to be trapped into that model of doing freelance copywriting. Then you get to a point where you're now known by yourself and you can't do anything else creatively. And then you're stuck in that box and you're desperately looking for a knife to cut a hole somewhere to breathe.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that, and I think I guess the one thing that I've found in that scenario is being how do you say that? I guess they called it like consulting wise, but it's kind of like being the specialist in that field
Mm-hmm.
and being like the one who knows about it more than the one who can just do it. Because it's like, okay, to copyright, same as like videography. I know tons of people who can do video, who can take photos. That's great.
Yeah.
But there's very few people that understand the importance of why to use video, how to use it, when to use it, and how it relates to the brand and things like that. So that's where like that separates the just the videographer, the guy behind the camera, to the creative consultant that's actually helping you build a brand message and helping you, making your process of doing your business or whatever it is easier using that skill.
Oh,
So I think it's
100%. And I've met other copywriters. Actually, this last week I was in Toronto doing a bunch of startup events and conferences while attending them. And I was at an event, and I pitched in front of the group because it was just all the stars were pitching. And afterwards, a copywriter came up and said, "Hey, I have the same approach." And I said, "Okay, cool, that's good. Like you should use poetry as your approach. But have you branded yourself like that?"
mm,
There's something about it where, and I agree actually that everyone can do copywriting or marketing strategy or videography or photography. But it really comes down to how you brand yourself and what sort of image you create around your name. Because then you can position yourself as an expert. And then when
yeah,
clients see you, they can say, "Oh, this guy is brilliant at branding because his videography company name is unique and his videos are all unique." Or, like in my case, he uses poetry, but he doesn't say that it's but that's kind of it. Like I can't think of any others who use poetry in the forefront. So this guy
Yeah,
must know what he's doing. So you're right.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
you're right,
it's it's like I was talking to a different Kyle who also is a videographer, but he mentioned that it's the importance of niching within the niche.
Yeah.
So it's like once you find, you have copywriting, right? You might have copywriting for businesses, but it's like, but now you have creative copywriting using poetry. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, you can find other copywriters, but they don't do this to this extent. So even the smaller you go, it makes you more of a specialist instead of a generalist. That's how he put it.
Yeah. And it comes down to the brand values because, I mean, I guess for me, poetry and really showing, like my brand values is personality, passion, and poetry essentially. And so I have to stick to it. I can't really just go out and do random stuff and expect that it's going to fit the name.
Mm. Yeah, so
So
you
yeah,
have
you're
to.
right. The minute you niche down, you essentially you either have to back it up with your brand value or not really, or just fake it till you make it until you have enough clients that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that's usually the hard part. That's where you become more of a generalist. When you're
Yeah.
a specialist, you can't take any, just every project. It has to be very specific to what you do and how you do it. You know.
And there's a hard part to that. Like I've had trouble with that over the years where there's a certain company that'd be cool to work with, but it doesn't fit the brand, or like they don't need personality driven writing. They need basic corporate copywriting. Or with agencies it can come up, or so I don't know. There is a balance, and for anyone that is trying to niche or that is niched, I think they'll agree that it's great to niche, but at the same time, like it's a downfall because you can be limited and you have to look for clientele that are trying to break barriers. And that's a factor for me, is that in order for me to do the best work and have the most results, I need to meet someone that's trying to create a startup that's completely unique, or that's trying to change the industry or really change customer interaction. So it's a negative and a positive because
Yeah.
that, yeah.
No, I mean yeah, because it goes down to. I mean, the importance of it is that there is a specific type of person that you're working with, or type of
Oh
company
yeah.
that you're working with. So that's what makes it like kind of narrows it down. But that also means that other people who are not in that will also reach out to you,
Yeah.
even though
Which
you
is
have that
nice though,
specific.
dude. I can say it's kind of nice because you can go into events or go into a meeting and someone says, "Hey, I need technical writing or I need a white paper." And I can directly say, "No, I can't do that. But here's someone that
Mhm.
can." Like there's something that's really comforting and powerful in being able to know your style and immediately tell someone that I'm not the right person. So instead of wasting time on that whole like that flirting process, so to speak, of
Mhm.
finding clients or clients finding you, I'm able to jump in and directly say, if you don't like a lot of voice and personality in your writing, well, don't go with the person who specializes in personality and voice.
Yeah, it's true. And and even a lot of times it's funny because those brands that you say, or those companies that you say no to, they respect you that much more and would probably take your recommendation of doing more personalized writing, because they'll be like, okay, so why, what do you do that's different, and then how can
Yeah.
we implement that? Because all I know is I need, this, like you said, white paper done or whatever.
Or you need like
But
social media. Like, why can't you do it?
exactly, and then that way you can explain more, and then they're like, okay, well, maybe we can use him and that writing style. So it's kind of like the upper hand on us as a creative, and it keeps it fun and interesting. That's a lot of things. Like
Yeah.
when you take up too many clients that don't fit your brand, it really tends to, like, it does get a little bit sour, just because you're not expressing yourself fully, And then also the client is not going to get the 100% of the work that they wanted because that, that connection isn't there from the beginning. So it's
Yeah,
not
it
fair
brings
for
you
both
down,
sides.
like it really does bring you down. You're right. When you're not working with the right person, or when you know that you're not able to fully use your potential or the potential of the client, it does. You do their work and it's only like a 75% effort. It's not really full.
It's not fulfilling.
No.
Yeah, it's not. You're just like, okay. Yeah, it really becomes work at that point. It's just you
Yeah.
work because you did it.
You're not enjoying trying to help them figure out a message or figure out how to communicate ideas. It now becomes just like pure systemic strategy into play, figuring out the right transitions between images. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Just man, I know that feeling. Actually, one of the before I went more full time, um, I would say like freelancing or working with certain companies. Before I was just doing like graphic design for kind of like an events company. So they would do all their event flyers and things like that. But it was just very easy, like, cut this image out, make this kind of like poster ad or sale. And it was just like very like simple things. And, they were paying me well and everything. And they give me like the freedom. But I felt bad because I was like, we can do so much more, but it's not what you're looking for. And my skill set is like above that. So I'm just doing like the bare minimum because you're happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very like it was tough on me because I'm just like, oh, come on, I could be doing more challenging works. I can be, really like bringing this image or this message of a brand like to a higher place, but they really didn't want that. So it was like I couldn't stay there just for that. I was just like, I'm sorry, but I'm too complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not meant for me.
Yeah, but it
And
was
that's
it was
it's
it was
nice.
fun.
It is nice to have those moments because then you're able to help others. Like there's projects that come up that don't really fit me, but instead I can help out other content creators or other copywriters that specialize in technical writing or are just starting out or don't have a niche.
Yeah,
So it's kind of nice. And I imagine for you, it's the same, right? Where if there's certain things you don't do, you have a person that you go to and you're like, hey, here's a project, go ahead and do it. This is what they want. I don't really want to do it, and it's not really my thing. So take it.
yeah, exactly, and it's good, yeah, because you're able to hand off and then help other bring others along the way. This is good. So then, Kyle, really quick, who do you like when you're looking for inspiration, or who are the people that you look to for that have inspired your work or that you look up to like in the creative space?
I would say so lyrically, Kendrick Lamar. Like
Oh wow, okay.
I just because the way that the messaging and all of his music, it's so subtle, but it's brilliant because even the songs are double layered. So musically, I find that his music is actually really tends to inspire me with writing and with marketing messages, especially because he's able to do it so well. And even when you look at any of his music and his album, it comes through. And then I would say I used to be inspired by Gary V for a while,
Mhm.
but then I got to a point where my experience is too far beyond where he's at. Um, and so now I'm getting more into niched things. So there's PC Neistat is one of those dudes that has always been there.
Okay.
And I say that because his video style is very ADHD type editing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also brilliant storytelling. And it's something that you can watch one of his videos and always get some sort of creative idea out of it. Or you can watch his videos and see how he transitions from a New York street shot to him on his longboard to him on rollerblades. And then it's just, there's something about it where I'll see that and think, oh, that'd be brilliant if I applied this to a product, to 3 product features.
Yeah.
I
see that.
And I'm trying to think of other people. Like Gary Halpert is he's an incredibly famous copywriter. So he's really interesting to watch because he knows he invented a lot of the main things we do with copywriting at this point.
What's his last name?
Halpert, Halpert.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I always try to, write these people down so I can also like look into them and as well.
And I'm trying to think of if there's any others that I've noticed, because I consume a lot of content, and I'm sure you do too. So it's one of those things where you see so much.
You forget what comes from who.
100%. It is the biggest problem I have is that I there's a lot of things I've read and a lot of things I watch, and then I'll tell someone about it, and I get halfway through saying it, and I'm like, oh, is that from him?
Yeah, exactly.
No, oh, maybe it's not.
Yeah, it happens.
But other than that, I feel like sometimes photo manipulation. So a lot of those bigger accounts that do photo manipulation are interesting.
Okay.
But for me, and it's kind of a weird niche, but I find that whole niche of Instagram model paired with mental health anxiety captions is something that I find incredibly motivating and educational.
I see that. Why would you say? I think I know why, but why does it capture your attention? Like,
it's the way they use writing to get a message out that you wouldn't expect. So they make their photo where it's like whether it's a normal like bikini photo or a photo of a product or topless or just like your generic I'm walking on the street accidentally but not really type of thing. But it's the caption that comes in, and it's brilliant writing. Like it's storytelling, and they might only write 2 paragraphs, but there's no spacing. They're all drawn out sentences, but all these influencers, so to speak, in this space, they have followings. They get engagement of 90 plus comments every time because they're able to evoke emotion and get people to stop and actually write a comment. And I find that, so when I'm ever looking for things to write about, or if I need content for myself, you can always go to people like that so like founders of swimwear companies or people that have started ethical makeup brands because they're
have
all like
a strong message.
Yeah, it's all message driven where every single post has a clear message that's trying to lead their post, and they stick to it. Like some of them are terrible at it, but most are actually brilliant at getting the reader to jump into their story and to hear their process, or to really make you think about your own life and about why you should meditate, or why you should reflect on things, or like, oh, that makes me really think about the time that I went for a hike one day, but I listened to music instead of not. So it's an odd thing, but I feel like for anyone that wants to learn copywriting and how to write really well, a lot of influencers in that ethical sustainability niche are great examples because they're able to get a message out and make you feel bad for not buying.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's like you don't 100%. How do I say? The person who they are and the person who you are usually 2 different people, and you want to get there in a sense. Like, it's usually like these people with like very healthy lifestyles and, always positive. And so you want to be around those type of people. And then when you see their values and what they really care about, it's like, wow, this person's like this, and some type of like kind of like a supermodel and an influencer, but she cares about the wildlife and about clean water and things like that. So it brings that person being kind of like famous or like a supermodel status, and it makes them very human in a
Yeah.
sense. That's what I think. That's why it's so captivating, because you're just like, well, this person who is supposed to be very like, I guess, like stuck up and thinks they're better than everybody, is really looking out for, the less fortunate, or is really speaking on this political view, or whatever it may be.
Oh, 100%. And their values come through. From a branding perspective, they nail it when it comes to branding themselves and getting their values out in the open. But it's not direct. Like, it's not a blatant thing saying I care about trees or I care about happiness. It's more of like they'll take the entire caption to show they care about happiness. It's just really clever.
Yeah. No, I've definitely I've seen that, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and it is captivating. Every time, like, I'll sit there and I'll read it, and I'm just like, I just read like all these sentences. Like, this was long, but I read it until
Right.
the end.
Yeah, like I just wasted 5 minutes reading this essay about a person I don't care about a problem that does not concern me whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's the power of copywriting. Good,
Yeah.
good written text and that evokes emotion will capture you, even if the topic has to do with you or not, or even if you don't have interest. But
It just works.
it does. That's awesome. So Kyle, brother, I've gotten a lot out of this, and I've really, I'm happy that we were able to connect. Um, I haven't thought a lot about like copywriting and things like that, but it's definitely something that now I'm putting more into perspective. And now that you mentioned even like how you use poetry into it, it's something that I'm also going to research and look into to see how I can implement and how it can work and the power of it. So it's been fun. It's been fun hearing it and learning
Thank you,
everything.
man. It's been a really good chat. It's fun when you speaking to people in other industries or other niches, because then you kind of there's a similarity that you both know you offer. But it's nice to have that chat and just be able to connect with another creative that's also trying to do something that's pretty exact.
Yeah,
So it's
for sure.
fun, man.
No.
And yeah, and if you have questions about anything, let me know. But definitely just look into it. And there's a lot of experts out there, and there's a lot of ways that you can learn just from consuming content. And that's the biggest thing that, yeah, you can learn a lot from just reading on Instagram and LinkedIn and see tricks and really avoid the message and look at structure and look at how people do things, and you'd be surprised.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, all the strategies are out there. I mean, we live it because we are engaged by it all the time. So there's things that grab our attention. We just have to know, why did it grab our attention?
Yeah,
Kind of reverse engineer it and then use that same method.
exactly, dude. That's the way to do it.
That's awesome. So Kyle, so if people want to continue to follow you and see all the new works that you're doing, or they want to check out, I know you also have a podcast. So where can they check you out? Where's the best place to follow and connect with you?
Yeah, so if you want to follow my journey and a lot of just my creative muses, which is a lot of random things, you can follow me at Buddy the Prophet, and Prophet as PHET, or you can also just the follow the company name at Poetry Ghost, which is on all platforms as it sounds. And yeah, because if you're interested in hearing about people and stories, there is the radio show that you can find through my personal Instagram. And yeah, I'm always up to meet new people and just like see what they're doing creatively, because it's nice to be surrounded by creatives, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. No, and like you said, because we're in the same headspace, going through the same struggle. So to be able to kind of reflect off of each other is comforting.
Oh, 100%.
So it's good. But awesome. So then everybody who is listening or viewing, you heard it at follow him at Buddy the Prophet. I'll have that also written out so it's easier. And and then also they can find you at Poetry Ghost on all social platforms. Like I mentioned, Kyle.
Just look for the logo with the quill, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I've seen it. I like the logo. It's nice. It's very subtle. But that's good. But yeah, Kyle, again, thank you so much for hopping on and for having this conversation. Like I said, I definitely learned a lot, and I know this isn't the last time that we'll be speaking. So, from now on, like I mentioned, now I've met you. So now your journey and the things that you're working on is that much more interesting to me. So I'm definitely going to be, checking in and keeping myself updated with everything that's going on with you.
Yeah, man. Same here.
Brother. Awesome. So for everyone else that's out there, like I mentioned, first of all, thank you for listening, and then definitely go check out Kyle and all his work. And as I always mention to all of our listeners is that each and every one of you are super creators. You just have to find out what is your superpower. So until next time, thank you for listening to the Super Creators Podcast. Take it easy.